The topic of our this afternoon's meeting is seems to be quite relaxing, because we are going to talk about the urban gardens and allotment gardens in different cities of our Connecting Nature Partnership. My name is Natalia Madajczyk, and I represent the city of Poznan. We have here today Prieto from A Coruna, and Gillian Dick, who just we welcomed in our audience right now. And we are all going to tell you about our experiences in bringing nature and cities closer to citizens. As Siobhan said yesterday during one of her presentations, this is actually one of the goals of our work. This is also a kind of a very important factor of increasing quality of life in cities, that all the citizens have access to nature as close as possible. Okay, so let me start with the case study of Poznan. We translated the pilot project title that we implemented in the frame of the Connecting Nature project. Garden season, let's meet on the plots. As the city, as a front-runner city of the Connecting of Nature, we defined allotment gardens in Poznan as the nature-based solution, which actually is quite disclosed from wide community. And during our project, we decided to start the process of opening some of the allotment gardens to our Poznan citizens. Okay. Oh, it's here, sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm just not very used to this beamer. So allotment gardens in Poland, first of all, let me explain you some details about what actually allotment gardens are. Well, the tradition of allotment gardening in Poland is very old, because it's over 100 years. And it's based on the German idea of allotment gardens. It incorporates a wide scope of social and recreation and sports program. The importance of the social and well-being functions actually induces the name of the family allotment gardens. We call them rodzinne ogródki działkowe. And actually, the structure, the management of these places is quite specific, because the allotment gardeners, they do not own the land, but they just cultivate it on the basis of a kind of allotment contract. However, everything they produce on this allotment garden and everything they build belongs to them. As for some data details, in Poland, allotment gardening is very popular. It has become very popular, especially after the Second World War. It is estimated that we have in Poland 4,626 family allotment gardens. And it covers the area of 40,394 hectares. In Poznan, we have over 80 family allotment gardens. However, you must know that in every of these allotment gardens, there are also several dozens of other smaller units. Unfortunately, for over a dozen years, allotment gardens are being liquidated. What is the reason? Mainly that they are based in the attractive locations of the city, especially those in the city centers, and they are, of course, becoming a very interesting plot for development of buildings. Here is the map of the green spaces in Poznan, and you can find the allotment gardens as those orange dots or squares everywhere. You can see that they are very often located on the outskirts of Poznan. Many of them are new ones, because the central plots are being developed into building spaces, However, there are some in the city center which are very popular now and very valuable also for the ecological situation of the city. Okay, and when it comes to the situation of the allotment gardens in our city and in other Polish cities, their situation has changed for the last several years. First of all, the status of the allotment gardens as green areas is quite controversial because, as I said, they have a specific nature of management. They are managed by different associations, and they are functioning like closed communities. So people who own the allotment gardens are just, not letting people from outside in. So contrary to public green areas, these are semi-public spaces with limited access to for wider group of people who are not the allotment users. The situation became very dynamic, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, because we have never expected such a boom for allotment gardens in Poland. As you can remember, especially in those days when we were restricted from leaving our homes without masks, these were actually those places where people could experience some kind of fresh air and liberty. So the prices of the allotment gardens went really, really up. However, there are also two specifics about the allotment gardens which are really important when you think about their characteristic in our cities. Allotment garden users and other city dwellers really benefit from their existence in the city because the allotment gardens provide a wide range of regulatory and basic services. So especially those located in the city centers are very beneficial for the microclimate. They provide eco-services and, of course, this leisure and recreation. However, we also perceive that there is a huge need for education of the allotment gardeners, because many of them are not using those plots with respect to nature. They actually treat it mostly like a leisure place. So there is a threat for biodiversity in these places, and we can see that they really need to be re-educated how to boost this ecological role of the urban allotment gardens in city. Okay. And now there are some pictures that are to melt your heart, because I can show you the example of classical new allotment gardeners. These are my nephews, and their parents, they actually acquired an allotment garden just at the beginning of the pandemics. They were lucky, actually. And we can see that actually these places are also a chance for boosting the social cooperation, like between, for example, different generations, and also educating children about how the nature works in cities, because very often they just don't know, for example, where the flowers come from, and, for example, where the tomatoes come from. So you can see they're very eager to explore these topics. Okay, and now coming to the main topic of my presentation. Within the Connecting Nature project, we just started discussing how to answer this controversy around allotment gardens in our city, because we saw that there is a huge threat for some of the allotment gardens, especially in the city centers, that they might be liquidated. On the other hand, we have in our city a kind of a program performed by another department which provides some kind of technical assistance to the allotment gardens, and one of the requirements is that these allotment gardens are open for the public on several rules. However, when we asked the department whether they are somehow checking whether this opening is in reality, they said they don't have such a tool to check it. So we just started thinking about developing and implementing a pilot project that would open some of the allotment gardens in the step-by-step manner. And of course, it was possible in the frame of the Connecting Nature project. So the main project idea was to provide citizens with access to nature. And the co-production process from our Connecting Nature framework was actually in the very heart of this process. When we started analyzing the history of the allotment gardens in Poznan and in Poland, we just saw that we are not inventing the wheel, because actually the opening to wider public was very often implemented in the 60s or in the 70s. And actually the situation changed when people started using it as a private area. So here you have some retro pictures from the past of people like celebrating, for example, the crops from the allotment gardens. And we just decided to start with this pilot project. The first step was a selection of allotment gardens that we wanted to invite for cooperation. Then we mapped the external stakeholders who would be involved in this process of planning and developing the opening. We also, of course, got the consent of the allotment gardens that we chose, and we established cooperation with a very experienced NGO called Zasiej Association from Warsaw, who already had this experience in opening of some of the allotment gardens in other cities. The selection criteria that we took was in line actually with our Connecting Nature criteria, because we really wanted to deal with those nature-based solutions called allotment gardens that are in the city center, in the densely built urban areas. We wanted to see that there is a deficit of other green areas around. Of course, we were very much focused on the guarantee that the existence of the allotment garden is still secured in the local plan. And we also wanted to have the common area in the allotment garden, because this could be actually some kind of a neutral place that would welcome people from the outside. Here is the map. I think that not all of you will have know what actually we are looking at, but the places that we took for our pilot project is Rod Kopczyńskiego and Rod Marii Curie-Skłodowskiej, because this is a private land, so we could not cooperate there. What is quite interesting is that here we have this pocket park that our University of Adam Mickiewicz took for their research, and here is the place that we are talking about, two neighboring allotment gardens with many small allotment gardeners. Okay. So with our partners from this Zasiej Association, we had a very nicely designed process. First was the diagnosis. It was led mainly on the basis of talks with the association leaders from the allotment gardens. Of course, we talked about possible solutions, how to open it to other people, whether they are at all willing to do this. It was in the manner of brainstorming, of collecting ideas, and of course, exploring the area. Here was actually the first meeting that we had also with the stakeholders, like the representatives of the school, which is nearby, of the cultural center, and another school, because we thought that institutions are actually much more trustful for the gardeners than like regular citizens. Okay, then afterwards we led the individual meetings just to make the diagnosis deeper, and we also had the open meeting with residents where we summarized what the results of the diagnosis and discussed the other needs. Here is the meeting with the culture center, which is nearby. They were very much interested in using the space of the allotment gardens for their own activities. Here again, the ladies from the association explaining about their idea of how this project would go. And another part of the diagnosis, which were field studies, very, very interesting. It was interviews with allotment gardeners and somehow diagnosing also some kind of special interesting parts of each of the allotment garden that would become a kind of trademark for each of them. Okay, here you can see the pictures. There's also a very interesting thing that the metal works of the gates from each of the plot of the allotment garden are actually already they become like a kind of cultural heritage of these places. And we think that not many people actually are aware of it. Okay, so then we also wanted to involve people, of course, from the outside. We had the open study walk with the residents, with the gardeners, and with the institutions. At this stage, we already had some of the gardeners who were very open for cooperation. And there was some kind of nice incentives to join our walks, because our colleague created the map of each of the allotment gardens, and we could just follow the numbers and check what kind of interesting things are there. We also had a kind of contest for the name of the streets at the one of the allotment gardens, because they didn't have. Okay, these are the pictures from the study tour, study walk. And what is quite interesting is that we also managed to involve the local police, because actually we found that safety is also a kind of a factor that induces the openness of the gardeners, because when the police is there, they feel much more safe. And of course, the policemen promised that they will be more vigilant when it comes to the area. Okay, and then we had the last part of our work on the plot, as we can say. It was the opening initiation. We had 2 neighborly allotment gardeners day. The first one was mainly focused on celebration of the end of the season, of the gardening season. So we had, for example, a collection of fruits and vegetables from different allotment gardens. Also, some kind of workshops how to get the seeds, for example, from the tomatoes for another season. And the last one was the event that involved the school from the nearby. It was an artistic afternoon, an autumn artistic afternoon. We had performances by the children from the kindergartens and also by the youngsters from the high school. It was also enriched with a kind of a quest around the allotment gardens, where children were just checking different gates and answering questions, and it was very popular. Children were really very excited, which we didn't even expect, but they were. So, and of course, they get some gifts afterwards. Okay, here is the game with different gates, and each of them has the number and also the questions for it. And as you can see, it's also a very attractive graphic visualization of it. But what actually we aimed for, because it was not only having fun, not always fun, because sometimes, you know, interaction with people is not always fun, unfortunately. But okay, sorry. I mean, I will go into details maybe later on. Yeah, but we just wanted to create a kind of a guidebook for other allotment gardens that we have in Poznan, to propose them with the ready-to-use solutions, how to step-by-step open the gardens. Because we saw that it's not possible to impose the opening on the gardeners because they will not accept it. And it's like the solution is about, I don't know, maybe in the perspective of 5 years, to let them create a kind of a community that will just get entrusted to each other and start using it on their own rules. So we had the publication that I have here. Unfortunately, it's not in any other language, but only in Polish. So still, it's kind of, it might be, I think, soon in English, hopefully. What we just collected in this publication, it was actually the history, the short history of the allotment gardens, because we know that many people in Poznan, in Poland, even the gardeners, they don't know what actually the source of their allotment gardening is. We also proposed them the reasons why it is worth to open the allotment gardens, and we explained it just focusing on 3 different and key elements like self-organization, cooperation, and providing access to allotment gardens area. And we also proposed some kind of positive experiences and positive proposals of organizing different events in the allotment gardens. All of them are also somehow evaluated in money. So how much you have to, how much money you need to organize such an event. Mainly, they are events that can be organized, for example, by some NGOs or private groups who, of course, collaborate with the association that manages the allotment gardens. We have here the December, January, February, and different activities like, for example, Christmas workshops and some kind of workshops about nature-based solutions and so on and so on. And actually, we also divided this plan into 3 years, so to show how this process can go deeper into this collaboration. So from the first year, which is actually the year of building the trust between the stakeholders and the allotment gardeners, and we just provided them with the information how can they actually go and where they should, for example, stop or they can go forward. Okay, so this would be now, for now it's all that I presented from the city of Poznan. Now I would like to ask our colleague Antonio from A Coruna, who will tell us about the network of urban gardens. I can say that, and I think that actually A Coruna is some steps forward to us, because we just had this pilot project and they already are creating the network of gardens. So Antonio, I give you the floor.
Hello everyone, I'm Antonio Prieto from the city of A Coruna, and I will talk about our Connecting Nature exemplar, our Connecting Nature nature-based solution, which is focused on urban gardens. So the reason why we selected urban gardens as our exemplar is because urban gardens are small-scale projects, but they have the potential to be upscale to a citywide level. They are cost-efficient, so they but at the same time, they can address many of the key priorities and strategic goals of the city, and they are aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the European Urban Agenda and the Spanish Urban Agenda. We think that urban gardens are a perfect example of a nature-based solution because they are really able to deliver benefits at many different levels. They're a multifunctional tool that not only brings biodiversity, improves resilience against climate change effects, but it's also a place for healthy recreational opportunities. Urban gardening is also a moderate physical activity. So it's a way to keep people active. And they are also connected with ethnographic and cultural values of the territory and the history of people and the relationship between people and nature. They are also a great space for environmental education, and they can also promote new economic activities and opportunities for enterprises. So these are the three urban gardens that started our network in A Coruna. They are located at 3 different neighborhoods, and the location was actually the result of an open participatory process, open to citizens, to associations, to different communities, schools, NGOs, and different groups of stakeholders that were related to urban agriculture, that were interested in being connected to this kind of initiative. These are the three main municipal gardens, but we also have some smaller gardens, which are community gardens managed by associations and NGOs, and we have also school gardens as part of the network. And you can see here in this slide the situation that we had at the beginning of the project with the 3 municipal urban gardens, 3 smaller community gardens for association, and 5 primary schools with a school garden. And so this was reaching 218 families in the municipal gardens, 2 NGOs and associations, and 2,500 children in the school gardens. So what we did during the Connecting Nature project is expanding the number of gardens, reaching more families, more associations, and more children. We created a new urban garden, and you can see here the project for the new urban garden in another neighborhood of the city. And you can also see some pictures from the different gardens that are part of the network, and with some community groups and NGOs working with vulnerable collectives like migrants or women victims of gender-based violence, and also the school gardens, which are also a fundamental part of the network because of the importance of working with children and what it means for the future. This project was a way to break the silos in the municipality because it forced us to work with different departments. We are at the environment department, but because we have the school gardens as part of the network, we needed the involvement of the education department, of course, but also the employment department organized courses for unemployed people on urban agriculture. And the tourism markets department was also connected to this initiative because they had an organic products market that we wanted to connect to the urban gardens and the products of the urban gardens. But it was not just only a way to engage different municipal departments, but also external stakeholders. And we were also involved in a different project, in an urban project, which had a local group. And we used this local group to have all of the stakeholders in a room with the relevant stakeholders, like the NGOs, the gardeners associations, the neighborhood associations, teachers and parents from the school communities, and also professional gardeners and trainees from the course that the employment department organized and the university. We had regular meetings with this group of stakeholders. Then COVID came and the meetings had to be online, but we still managed to keep them engaged, and it was very fruitful conversations, and a lot of synergies came out of this group. Another very important tool that we developed in the gardens was the Sarajevo process, which is an art-based co-production tool designed by the team from the University of East London and the Trinity College Dublin. It was tested in Sarajevo for the first time, then in Nicosia, in Greece, and then in A Coruna. And it was very useful to engage a group of gardeners and to create a community, to increase the sense of belonging to a community and to connect to the memories of nature and to express the way they felt about nature and about the urban gardens. Yeah, these are some more pictures from the process. We had the support of a poet, Yolanda Castaño, and an illustrator, Iria Fafian, who captured the individual experiences of the gardeners and created a collective piece, a poetic text, and 3 illustrations capturing all of those memories and all of those experiences that the gardeners had. And we had an exhibition in A Coruna in November, showcasing all of these results. We have also been organizing different workshops in the school gardens with children, and actually this was organized by one of the ECMEs that came out of the training course for unemployed people, and they were giving these workshops at schools. So then again, you see this connection between different things that were initiated in different municipal departments, but they all come together. And this training course, which was organized in the employment department, people from the course created an SME, and they are now working with the education department, organizing these kind of workshops. And we have also been organizing workshops in the community gardens with the associations, with the neighborhoods associations, and as a way to engage them and to make sure that they can take advantage of the plots, and they know how to work the land and how to obtain benefits, like I said, on many different levels. And thank you very much.
So thank you, Antonio. And now I would like to ask Gillian to say a few words about their experience with the gardens in Glasgow.
Okay, I'm going to disrupt completely. I'm going to sit down on the floor, so you have to look at me and screw up the cameras, because it's the last day and you need to stay awake. And I'm not meant to be in this session. I didn't know I was in this session until about 2 minutes ago. So I'm settling down. Are you all sitting comfortably? And I'll begin. Okay, I might as well go out as I started, I suppose. That way, this way. Shuffle. There. Right, okay, I've shuffled. Okie dokie. Right, Glasgow's growing. So Glasgow's allotments for over 100 years. We have the same problem that our colleagues in Poznan have, that once you get an allotment, you keep it, you inherit it, you don't let anybody near it. You lock the gates at night, so what is public land becomes private land that nobody can come into. So we may own it as a council, but we can't get into it. The Glasgow Allotments Federation, GAF for short, great name, GAF, want more allotments. Now, an average allotment is probably from where I'm sitting here to there, So this is probably to allotment size. If we were to fulfill the waiting list for allotments in Glasgow, we'd never build anything else. So we need a solution. There's a number of things going on. Glasgow's very unhealthy, and a lot of the data we've got, our health records are terrible. So if you live in Shettleston in the East End, your life expectancy as a male is 56. If you live 5 kilometres to the west as a male, you're up at 87 because you're in an affluent, because you're not eating healthily. So there's a food growing strategy in Glasgow, ties in with our open space strategy, and there is a food strategy to try and look at healthy food. Coming out of that was an acknowledgement that we were never going to provide enough allotments for everybody. So we started to look at community gardens. An experiment was done in Bellahouston Park, a very old park in the south side of the city, near Ibrox. So if you know about Rangers, just down the road from where Rangers play. Yeah, exactly. I'm giving people good references here. If you know your football, you'll know where it is. Old, kind of semi-affluent, one of the best council housing areas that were built in the 1930s, but it was built on an old estate. There was a walled garden in that old estate that had been abandoned, not used. So we decided to try and use it as a community garden. It kind of started in parallel along with Connecting Nature. That community garden divided into a couple of allotment-sized things, a couple of things the size of the stall in front of Antonio, a couple of things at the size of that pedestal, and we invited in various groups. So the local primary school, the secondary school, and various charities to enable, which works with adults with learning difficulties, with a charity helping people returning from the jail embed themselves back into community, and long-term unemployment. And it got them working in gardens, understanding how things grew. It gave them a learning experience, it gave them a confidence experience, it gave them resilience, it made them more employable, it reduced their dependency on prescription drugs for depression, it improved their learning and cognisis, I can't say the word, their connections in their brains improved, the children connected with the elderly, they started telling each other stories, and we captured those stories. And we did try the wonderful business model canvas with them as a test, which is when we discovered that it's a community engagement tool. The second one, very quickly, is in Grow Chapel, and Grow Chapel has been developed as part of the Connecting Nature project. It's in Drum Chapel in the northeast, another deprived community. It's on a bit of land left over from an abandoned football pitch. It did all its planning prior to the pandemic, again used the business model canvas. It's a whole collection of community groups, the young, the old, people who've never dug anything before in their life. And they did all their planning, figured out how they could be resilient by using the business model canvas. They got going just as the pandemic restrictions released. We did the launch of Urban by Nature there last Friday. The one guy who has got his allotment going, half the size of this, says he's never gardened before, but his way of getting out and going for a walk every day, and he used to go and skip dive once things. So he's got some lovely astroturf stopping the weeds from coming up in the bit he's going to plant later. He's got some lovely pallet pathways. He's rescued some plants that were thrown out, and he is now helping the other people who are coming after him. They're trying to capture all their rainwater, and they have plans to take over the abandoned football pitch and put wildflowers in with PV, and the wildflowers could be sold on to other people or given to local cafes or restaurants or the school for decoration. I'll stop there. You've now had to focus somewhere differently. I'm glad you're with you. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you very much. It's really, we are so lucky that you joined us at the last time.
You want to bet?
Yes. Well, actually, it's now time for a short discussion and also the questions from the audience. But first of all, I would like to stress that I can see that each of our cities is on a different stage of opening of those, let's say, restricted areas to wider groups of citizens. But do you see, I just wanted to ask, where do you see the future of these activities in your cities? Is there someone or some organization that is going to follow up with it? Or what are the obstacles to it, some kind of difficulties, and maybe some kind of positive scenarios for the future?
Do you want me to go first? Some of you may have met the lovely Sandy Patterson in Glasgow. Sandy is amazing. He turned up, I think, on both summits that were online. He's Brilliant. Yes, Siobhan, he is. He's lovely. He couldn't be more welcoming. He's positive. He's the guy that's leading on our food growing strategy. He's trying to make sure that there are opportunities for community gardening. He knows what he's looking for, and therefore he's going to ask our maps, I need areas that are this kind of size, near this kind of community, have this kind of access, not too polluted. So we will work with Sandy to find the sites. He's then trying to empower and make more resilient the communities so they can start working together. And I think the idea of the community garden is a bit like Antonio, if you bring different collectives of people together, they've got different skill sets. We still have the Allotment Society on our back going, these are not allotments, you legally have to provide allotments, when are you going to provide allotments? And if you look at some of our allotments, some of them have never grown something on them for the last 20 years. They've got a collection of sheds, some deck chairs, and they're where somebody escapes from the house because they don't want to be in the house. And they go and have a chat with their pals. So yeah, I think the community gardens are the future because they allow more people in. The other thing we're going to try and do through policy is try and make sure that any new developments, whether it's housing or whether it's economic, provide growing spaces, whether they are on the roof or in the courtyards or on the balconies. So there's an opportunity to grow things in not the usual suspect places.
But you settled the cooperation with the Association of the Allotment Gardens as a city, or?
No.
No.
No, they are falling out with me big time because I'm not going, yes, you can have more allotments. And they don't like our open space strategy because it doesn't say you can have allotments everywhere. It talks about growing spaces. We're not giving them special dispensation. They don't get it. But the problem is they're quite old. And anytime we consult them, I'm looking forward to our next development plan consultation because they will ignore the online version and they will ignore the request to separate all their comments out into individual paragraphs, and they will send us War and Peace. And then some poor colleague, hopefully not Jamie who's sat up there, will have to sit for 2 days and chunk it up into usable comments. So, yeah.
Thank you, Gillian. And Antonio, can you?
Yeah, I think in A Coruna the situation is a bit different because we don't have this tradition of allotments. So urban gardens are quite a new concept for us. I think generally in Spain we don't have this tradition that you have in Poland and in Scotland too. But so the gardens that we created, they're open to all citizens, but they're still divided into individual plots. And that is a problem because, as Gillian is saying, we have a huge waiting list, so it's impossible to find the space. And we are a really, really compact city. We don't have a lot of open spaces, so it's been really difficult to find new places to create more gardens. So I agree with Gillian that community gardens are probably a better solution because they allow more people to share the same space. And we have some good experiences on that sense too. We have smaller plots that were, they were too small to be divided into individual plots. So we created community gardens, and we've been working with associations and with neighborhood associations on those gardens, and it's working quite good. And they are also, they have been opening the garden to the neighborhood, and they are attracting more people into the gardens and working with the schools, the primary schools, and the secondary schools. So I really think that's probably the way to go.
Yeah, it's a lot of work cooperating with so many stakeholders, I think. And from the perspective of Poznan, I can only add that the future of our pilot project actually depends on the willingness of our allotment gardens, others than those that we involved in the pilot project, and of course, actually on the people, on the team that would manage this process. However, we think that the publication that we created and we will be distributing when we come back from here, I think, will be a really helpful tool for all the NGOs, for the people who would like to induce the opening of their allotment gardens, because we don't want to deal it ourselves as the city hall, but to give it to people, to associations, to NGOs and those stakeholders who are around different allotment gardens to go on independently. Hopefully they will. Okay, so we still have some minutes for the questions. If you have any, please feel free to ask. Agnieszka. No, because there is one from the chat and one from the audience. Yeah, so.
Hi, I just have a question about inclusion of minority groups and diversity. So how do you ensure that there's genuine inclusion and buy-in in terms of ownership from minority groups, and it's not just tokenism when the project ends? So, great. So for any of the panel members.
Yeah. So in our case, in A Coruna, the municipal gardens have some reservation of plots for minority groups, for refugees, for women victims of gender-based violence. I'm talking about the general urban gardens open to all citizens. They have a reservation of plots that are, they have a priority to access the gardens. And then we are working, as I said during my presentation, with NGOs that are developing specific programs aimed to vulnerable collectives in some of the smaller community gardens.
So just to give you a kind of add-on from that, in Scotland, we've just got new guidance out on open space strategies and also on place sufficiency assessment. And that says that we have to legally consult across the kind of diagonal divide of what's in those communities. We have to genuinely consult across ethnicity, gender, age, and any other kind of thing that you bring into that. And that means we're going to have to make sure we have genuine conversations with people. But just to give you an example, in Glasgow, beside the tramway, which is now an art gallery or an art space, there is this thing called the Hidden Garden. Now, the south side of Glasgow is very ethnically diverse and has a population from the Indian subcontinent and from, I'm forgetting the religion, but it's one of those ones where the women can't go out without their husband's permission, can't be seen by the other men. But there is a space in the Hidden Garden which has a sort of walled off space, which the community, the wider community know is for the women and children only. And we know if we want to go and have a conversation with them, if we send in women planners or researchers, they can go and have a conversation with them over a cup of tea and a biscuit and it's fine. But if we were to approach them in the street or ask them to turn up at the mosque or something, they wouldn't do that. So we need to be more acute about where we're going and how we're talking to people. Some of it is about talking to the children and getting stuff going back through the schools, because that then goes through to the parents as well. And we need to start talking to the refugee communities as well. It's hard and everybody's trying to do the right thing. And I don't think we'll ever all get it right, but we'll just do our best.
And from the Poznan perspective, we can say that our pilot project already involved children with light disabilities, because actually one of the stakeholders around one of the allotment gardens is this high school for its integration high school, as we call it. So, but it was not planned. This was the stakeholder who was very much interested in using the common space. We also heard the ideas of creating some kind of therapeutical gardens for people with disabilities, because actually coming to the allotment garden space is more intimate for them than using, for example, parks or open spaces. So in this case, this closed area is much more positive for them. We also have to stress that Poznań and other Polish cities used to be quite homogenic when it comes to minorities, the refugee minorities. But now, of course, with the Ukrainian situation, we have many of Ukrainians coming to our cities. And I think that the idea of providing them with such space at the allotment gardens will be also one of the ideas that of projects that will be developed in these spaces. So this is for us actually the first experience, and we are looking forward to share it with more experienced cities.
Okay, so a few questions online, but the one for Antonio would be that it's from Maiden French back in Dublin, who says that very inspiring, thank you for everybody, but wanted to ask about the sustainability of allotment gardens. So typically these are volunteers or unpaid or low paid. So the question really is to yourself, maybe if anyone wants to chip in, what in terms of the longevity, how do we continue on if it's all being done by volunteers or expecting volunteer participation, and we know how that changes over time. So in your opinion, how do you feel this can be sustained?
Yes, so we are working on different strategies to obtain sustainability of the project. First of all, at the moment in A Coruna, the city council is responsible for most of the fees, for most of the costs of the gardens, but we are trying to transition towards a shared responsibility between the city council and the association, the gardeners, the community, and this association, they have access. They are a legally registered association, so they also have access to different funding mechanisms at the local level, but also at the regional level or national level, and they are also charging a membership fee, which is also a way to be self-financed. And on the other hand, they will still have the support from the municipality, at least until we can guarantee that they are able to maintain themselves on their own. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
I think that's probably the same kind of thing for us as well. We're trying to get them to be resilient and self-sustaining, and we're trying to give them the tools to make them resilient and self-sustaining. And one of the great tools the community in Grow Chapel came back and said to us was the business model canvas, because it made them think differently about how can we sweat this asset that we're going to create. So yeah.
So from the chat is all the questions. Do you have some more? One last question.
Yeah. Hi. One initiative that's gaining kind of momentum around bringing nature back to cities is the banning of pesticide use. I wondered if that's something that's considered around urban allotments when you're using them as nature-based solutions, and whether that's something you've considered, and whether it's an area of conflict around the users.
I think certainly in Glasgow, the kind of guidance will be to try and use all natural kind of solutions, particularly if we're looking at the food growing in our local biodiversity action plan and the implications. We've got enough contaminated soil and enough air pollution as it is without adding any more into it. Now that's incredibly difficult if you don't know how to do the old-fashioned way of managing plants and managing managing pests. But people are starting to learn, so the connection between bees and beehives and the bees managing some of the pesticides or whatever is being made, and the connections between having the right plants. And I'm sure our friends at Helix, I'm sort of staring at me, would tell me more about which plants are the right plants for the right things at the right time. I was no good at biology, but there is those that do know the connections and know what you should plant to manage that mini ecosystem. And I think certainly in our community gardens, that's what Sandy's trying to do, and work with the communities to do it.
Yeah, it is certainly a problem when it comes to defining the allotment gardens and nature-based solutions. And we actually had 2 weeks ago a very interesting meeting with the colleagues from the urban planning department, and there was already a discussion about liquidation of different allotment gardens, and one of them said, well, come on, don't tell me it's nature, because they are like polluting air and using pesticides and just planting the several shreds, and that's all. So we can see that it really is a matter of educating of people, of the allotment gardeners, but it's also a kind of I don't know, opportunity for obtaining funds for leading such projects in the community gardens, in the allotment gardens, because, of course, the subject of ecology, of nature, cultivation, and so on, it's very popular, and it, you know, different association can get money for funding. So it's like the it's a great opportunity for them.
It's kind of, if you look at it, Glasgow started a pollinator project, which is something that's probably trying to do the same thing. And I would imagine the same kind of thing is happening, or you're looking at the same kind of thing in A Coruna.
Yeah, and in our case, the gardeners are required to only use organic agriculture, so they cannot use pesticides in the gardens. However, yeah, the problem is it's not easy to control that. So in principle, they're not using pesticides, but in reality, it's not so clear if that's always the case. But they are required to only use organic agriculture, and they can be fined if they use pesticides.
You're going for a last question.
That was last question from.
A last authorized question. That was unauthorized before me.
Now
So
you're disrupting.
Actually, I have a question to Poznan because looks like A Coruna is positive about the gardens. The Glasgow is has an issues with them, but you are somewhere in between. So actually, my feeling was that when I looked at the map you shown, that these people are, I mean, these gardens, they preserve the space. Like if you look around, everything was developed, and they kept it. Okay, they are doing maybe when use the pesticides, but they structurally don't change the land cover, let's say. So with opening up, will they be exposed to development or not? I mean, is that meant, because you also mentioned that there are development pressures in Poznan, and maybe the developers will be eating it into that space. So I understand that they are closed, so they want to keep the space available, let's say, to them personally, but they also keep the public good somehow, yeah, because this space is for future options, let's say. So are you keeping, what you are doing to keep them from development pressure? And if opening up leads to that some, even let's say the methodological development, because if they open to that, they may be open to some other pressures. So what city is doing to preserve the space actually? Physically.
Well, you know, it was a pilot project, so I cannot say from the perspective of the entire city and whether we have a strategy on it, because, you know, there is always a question whether we want to get the money to the budget from selling the land, or we want to keep the green space inside of the city. However, we know that there is the allotment gardens, they don't have a positive press, as we can say, especially in the eyes of people who just can see them, for example, from the street and say it's completely disclosed to us. So we think that through such process, you know, you can create a kind of wider stakeholder group around this community garden. So it's not only us and the community and the allotment gardeners, but we are also somehow the owners and users of this space. And through this solution, you can also create like more positive image of this part of the city. And you know already that citizens can really force the city government not to sell it. And this is actually the strategy behind this, I think. So it's like making a compromise, which is of course not always very easy, but on the other hand, keeping the space owned by more people than only the allotment gardeners.